Hello, all the heroes out there who are, joining the hero generation, no less. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Hey, just listening to some Counting Crows. You got to give it a listen every now and again. Just good stuff. Long December and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic stuff. You got to listen to it every now and again. Just having a little coffee and just had a delicious almond croissant. Goodness me, what a fantastic invention. What did we ever do before they came along for fun? Anyway, this is going to be a fun video for me anyway, talking about one of my favorite things to talk about, self-tracking tools and how to create them, which is like just so interesting and fun and fantastic. So we're just going to kind of go over some cool stuff and what it's all about. So the first thing to do to create psychometric tools is to identify sort of areas that you could ask questions about that would be good indicators of the thing you want to assess, the area you want to kind of get some more insight into. And we're going to look at recovery from a mental health addiction, really recovery from a period of time when you're really struggling, life is really difficult. Could be several factors: bereavement, onset of a disability, and many other things, trauma, some other tragic events. So there can be a lot of reasons for this reason you need to recover. But let's look at, I'm just going to introduce 5 areas that are helpful. And the first 3 are kind of special, and the last 2 are kind of interesting in how I developed them. And the first 3 I certainly didn't develop. They're just coming purely from the research, as these areas are really good indicators of recovery. The first one, and they have funny names, but I'll explain what they are. The first one is intrapersonal distress. Simply means how you're feeling inside yourself. The second one is intrapersonal distress. Basically, how you're doing in the important, significant, essentially close relationships, either really important friendships or close family members, how you're doing in those. And the last one then is social role functioning. How are you doing, in your different roles in your life, at work, or going out socially, or student, or roles you have in different in your community, or so on, just social roles and how you're doing in them is the third one. Now, if we put all 3 of these together, the research shows they're really good for showing us who is experiencing clinically significant distress. And that's the level of distress that you're just feeling very unwell in yourself and you're struggling to function in life. And each one of those indicates it. But the cool thing is that when you have clinically significant distress, each one of those will be low. And when you've recovered from it, each one of those will recover back to a more normal level, which is really cool. This is why it is actually not that hard to measure clinically significant distress, because they all go down. So when you're struggling with it, all 3 of these indicators will be low. And when you're improving, all 3 of them will improve generally over time. From the beginning to the end of the episode, they will have improved. That's why it's quite sensitive to change, because it's measuring the one thing in 3 different ways. So it's quite sensitive to, the graph will really show the progress. And you may, initially you may just improve in one of these areas and it will show that. But when you've, over time, when the episode is complete, you will have improved in all 3 areas. So it's really quite cool. And this is just nothing I figured out. It's coming from research, and you can check it out if you want. For example, you could just start out with having a look at the outcome questionnaire, and it's 3 subscales, which are exactly these. So that's really cool. So then so you've got your 3 areas now that you want to look at, and just let's think of some questions we can take. How would you ask about interpersonal distress? And honestly, if you want, the ones I picked on the recovery tracker is how are you doing in your emotions and feelings? For interpersonal distress, I used how are you doing in close relationships. And for social role functioning, the question in the recovery tracker that I ended up using is just very simply, how are you doing socially? With a little explanation of what that means, how are you doing in various, if you look at the recovery tracker, you can see it just gives a little insight into it. I think sometimes that's helpful when you're using the instrument for the first time. But after a while, it becomes very straightforward. You don't have to look at that. But you could pick other ways of doing that, and other tools do, So just think about it, work it out for yourself, a nice way of asking about these 3 areas. Or you could simply go to AI and say, give me a psychometric question that relates to any one of those interpersonal distress or intrapersonal distress or social role functioning. You could say, give me 5 of them. And then you could say, well, I like the second one, actually. Can we elaborate on that one a bit? But there might be something you want to change about it. And you'll come up with a nice question. And then you can say, well, give me a nice Likert scale for that. And you can give it some instructions about what you want the Likert scale to look like. And it'll give you someone, you can work it out. And you might like the first version, or you might give you a version of a Likert scale, and you might try something else. So AI is a great tool for developing psychometric tools. Or if you don't want to use it, that's fine too. You can just sit down with a piece of paper and play around with your imagination, your instincts, your intuition. These are fantastic tools as well for really great psychometric questions on these 3 areas. So yeah, that's it. That's how I created a recovery tracker, just doing that and trying it out and see what works for people. And that was it, so there was a point then, though, the question on interpersonal distress on close relationships. I was working with some people, and that question wasn't the most comfortable for them, for a variety of reasons. It just wasn't something they felt they were going to see change in, or they were comfortable. So I switched that out with another psychometric question about how supported they felt. And that question was simply, how well have you done at connecting with positive and supportive people? And that's connecting into a different psychometric, but you're creating a tool that works for that people. And that's called the alternative version of the recovery tracker. It's just nice. It can be nice for certain situations with people. Certainly I found in prisons, the alternative version just works a little bit more comfortably for people. But then some people, just give people options, it's self-tracking, so they can choose whichever version they want. So that's basically how to create a nice, simple tool to monitor recovery from, as I say, addiction, mental health, bereavement, onset of disability, trauma, whatever else that might have brought you into a period of really struggling in life and really feeling very, very unwell a lot of the time. And that's called clinically significant stress. And that's how it's done. That's how you create them. Just use those 3 psychometric areas, create some nice questions, put them on Likert charts, and then Likert scales, and then add up the Likert scales on a total score chart. Those 3 questions. And that's it. So let's move on to the next 2 areas that I like. One is the level of stress a person is having, and the other is the level of support they're experiencing, that they feel they're experiencing. And these work out great. But let me explain to you where I got these 2 psychometrics from, So when I was doing counseling, I was using a system called FIT, Feedback Informed Treatment. We use many different systems to monitor outcomes. This is a nice one. All these different systems do the same thing. They monitor their outcomes and your connection with the client. And they all got strengths and sort of limits, but they're all good. They all work fine. So it isn't a matter of, as long as you use them, one of them is great. I've used the outcome questionnaire, which is fantastic too. It has some great benefits. It's a little long, which the clients don't mind filling it out, but it's a bit long. I think sometimes the counselors, the therapists find it a bit long to use. But the outcome rating scale is good. I like the rating outcome scale too. It's a nice one. So I like Wim Webb's. They're all good, but the ORS is great because it's so quick and brief and easy to do. It's so inexpensive and straightforward. So I was using it anyway for counseling. It was a great tool to let me know that I was on track with the client or not really on track with them, to share that with the client, to get back on track. And using that's the ORS and the SRS, the session rating scale. It's a nice way just to check in with the client at the end of the session, see if we can just make sure where we want to focus on moving forward, keep that engagement as strong as we can, keep what they call a working alliance in good condition, collaboratively, because the client wants a good working alliance as well. So it's quite easy to have a chat about it and see what you might, how to improve that, focusing on the right stuff and meaningful stuff and making sure it's working. Anyway, so I had these 2 things, and they each have 4 questions and they have a total score. But I was looking at the charts for the total scores for each of them. I said, essentially, one is measuring the level of stress that they're experiencing, or really distress, and the other is measuring the level of support they're feeling in the counseling relationship. So I kind of expanded these to think about, well, okay, if you think about distress, moves towards stress, move towards okay, that's basically the psychometric scale there on that one. So distress, stress, and doing okay again, would be that scale. And the other scale was then how supported they feel from, not feeling supported in the counseling relationship, being very supported. But I broadened that up. I said, look at it, it's the counseling session support is very important, but it's actually their level of support overall is a huge contributor. So how supported overall do they feel in their recovery from the variety of supports available to them? So I created a 2-question version of it. One is just how stressed they feel, ranging from feeling, very distressed to feeling stressed overall, generally overall, how stressful was your week, to feeling okay, generally feeling okay most of the time, ups and downs, but okay, overall, doing okay, being able to manage things. And that was a nice scale, nice different ways of asking about it, different Likert scales you can use for that. And the other one was overall, how supported are you feeling in your recovery, and use a nice Likert scale on that. And that was the 2-question version of it, which works great. It's very, very nice too. But that's where it came from. It came out of me just thinking about those two, the ORS and the SRS and what they meant, and then broadening those a bit. So that's I got those other 2. So that's 5 psychometrics now. We've areas and specific questions we've talked about. Now, where are we up to? Yeah, I mean, that's really it. So there you go. Those are, and you can go, now that you understand those psychometric areas, the 5 of them, you can go and create tools yourself. How cool. And develop them and find out what works for you, or maybe create some collaboratively with your community, It's called, I guess as a professional, when I develop tools collaboratively with the population I'm supporting, it's called co-production. A fancy name for it. But, you could just be a bunch of people maybe you have a men's shed and you say, you know what, let's make a tool just for us that feels just right for us. And you could say, let's pick some psychometrics that are going to work for us and find a tool that you like that works for you. And then everybody can use that tool, and you can use it in a variety of ways. You could use it for just individually doing it. You could have a little sharing circle where you share your tool. You could use it to track your overall score, like a team, like everybody in the group who are signing up to it. They can say, here's our overall score, or you can put the highest and lowest on it and support each other's team to raise that score. That's a really cool thing that works great. If that feels right and it's a good fit for that group or that community, you could use it for mentoring. You could have a bunch of people who are just there. You might pick 4 or 5 really trusted members of the community, and let's say they make themselves available to support people who are going through a difficult time, and then people can choose. They would get to know them maybe socially, and then choose who they would like to have a chat with about improving their score. So lots of cool things you can do with these tracking tools. I thought it would be cool just to, there are other questions. There are other psychometric areas to explore for recovery, and I'm just gonna look at one just to broaden the conversation. And you can explore. You can think about, see if you can find more yourself. So the other one question is a nice one. Is how positive and optimistic. Do you feel? Yeah. There's different ways you can phrase them and different Likert skills, but just try and find something that feels natural and engaging for the question. So thinking back over the last week, which is generally actually all the other measures, generally you're using them weekly. But I have one that you use daily. And sometimes I like to use the 2-question one for a monthly one, which is a nice check-in over monthly. So you can vary the time frame as well to see what's a good fit for you, for the people you're working with, or for the community you're a part of. So you can vary the time frame, but oftentimes 2 weeks sometimes is fine too. Some measures use 2 weeks. And that's the beautiful thing about self-tracking tools, is you can customize them, and it gives you control and autonomy over them, either as an individual or as a community, or however you're using them. You can create them, or you can take other versions and you can, adjust them. You can change the questions, the scales, the chart. You can do it, whatever you need, make some small adjustments to it so that it works for you. I mean, again, just make sure that it's working for you, and that it's helping you out. So here's another one. Do you feel, and you can have, here's the crazy thing, you can have timeless ones. You can ask questions that don't relate to any time frame. Like if you just ask somebody, thinking back over the past week, answer the following question: do you feel positive and optimistic about the future? And a nice Likert scale might be never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always, or something like that. Or you can actually have timeless time frames, which is you just ask a person. This is how amazing people are, how amazing our minds are at getting this information. You could say something, do you feel positive and optimistic about the future? Would you say never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always? And they will have an answer for you, Isn't that wonderful? You don't even have to put a time frame with them. So, but that's a really cool one anyway, that question. But let's take a little deeper look at this single question, this single psychometric of optimism and positivity about the future. What does it indicate? Well, when it's low, it's not good, obviously, for your well-being. And when it's higher, that's a positive thing. That's an indicator that your well-being is in a better place. It also, we know from research that optimism, hope are actually predictive factors of recovery. So if you're going through a difficult time, if you have clinically significant distress, but you are feeling optimistic and you're feeling positive and you're feeling you have a process that will work for you, that actually correlates to improved outcomes. So it's a factor that indicates you're likely to get to a good place. It's when it's improving, it's indicating your trajectory. You are making progress towards this. So it indicates where you're at on your well-being. What level, a really low level, would be one indicator that clinically may be present. Because you need a few more questions in that to establish a strong likelihood of it. Because that. Several indicators is more reliable than one indicator, obviously. That's why these forms have several questions on them. Because you're trying to get several questions that actually are strong indicators of the one thing. So the overall score is generally going to be more reliable. So if you were to use this question, you probably want to add a few more, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 14 if you want. But I like the briefer ones. I like the ones that are just 3 or 4 questions, But longer ones are great too, So this is what does it do? It does 3 things. It is an indicator of how much clinically significant stress you have. It's an indicator of your trajectory, because if you have clinically significant distress, but this is higher, you're likely, which actually means it's a predictor. It has a predictive value. So it's not just indicative of your level of distress now. A higher level is predictive of a better outcome. So it's interesting. Psychometrics, some of them are just where are you at now. They're measuring that, and they have that quality. And some psychometrics have a predictive quality, which is really cool. So it's just interesting. The world of psychometrics, love them. Interesting stuff. If you find this stuff just excites you and you're passionate about it, just have fun making them, and try them out. Take it on as a project with your community to find something you all feel good about. And there's already ones out there, so maybe you'll take it on as a project and you'll try to create your own one, and maybe you will, or maybe you'll try to create your own and end up using one that somebody else created, or something inspired by something somebody else created. And you'll use it, and then maybe you could, once you understand them, you could say, well, let's have a review. Do we want to add or change a few questions on this to see where the community's at or whatever in recovery? So that's the exciting world of building self-tracking tools for recovery. It's just, I love it. I love this stuff. It's fun. But there you go. Hope you got something from this video.